Good evening, my name's Taylor Glant, and this is our first segment of a video series called Memories of McAdam. The intent of these videos is for generations to come so we can look back at the history of McAdam and the memories that we can cherish. Our first guest tonight is George Cook, and I can't think of a better guest to have on to start the series off than George Cook. George, thank you very much for coming in tonight and for being our guinea pig starting off the series.
Well, Taylor, you're entirely welcome. I'm quite happy to be here.
It's
I said, you might have a hard job getting me started, but you might have a hard job getting me stopped, too.
So I saw on Facebook the other day that you just celebrated a few weeks ago your 92nd birthday.
Yes, back in October 25th.
So congratulations, and you still work 6 days a week.
Yeah, just about.
Good for you.
Well, not full time, but, more or less.
Sure. George, do you want to take us right back? Because I know you have a wealth of knowledge of the history of McAdam, and did you want to take us right from where your family originated from and the history of that?
Oh, yeah. I guess so. I've got to remember this now, haven't I? Well, my folks, our mother and father, and their families all came from England, in around the Barking area, just outside of London. And as strange as it seems, my dad and my mother, they knew each other. They were in the same area, and they had known each other for years. And that's where they came from. And my family is kind of a mixed up family. It's like my father's family, like three families in one. My father was born in 1893, and then his mother had died when he was about 5 years old, hardly 5.
Wow.
And his mother's name was Alice Elizabeth Johnson. And then later on, my grandfather remarried, and he married Alice Harriet Rufford. And she had a daughter before they were married from another husband. So, and then when they got together, they had two more girls, and one is Rachel Nason, Mrs. Frederick Nason, here in McAdam. The other one was Violet Anderson. She married Hazen Anderson down in Andersonville. So there's like three families. My father was the only one in his family, and then the step sister was Elsie, and she married James Christie out in Christie Ridge. And then there's the other two girls. But anyway, that's...
So what brought them to Canada? Was there anything in particular that brought them?
Yeah, well, they lived over there, and things were hard, just tough over there, as you'd say, too, to make a living. And my grandfather took his family, and they moved into Wales for a while, and they worked down in the coal mine or colliery down there.
Wow.
In fact, son Larry, he's looked the place up on the internet there, and he found the spot.
Oh, really?
But anyway, and then about 1913, I believe, they came over to Canada, and they settled away out in Whitehead, settlement there. And then they were living there, and so in early 1918, Dad was conscripted into the Army, so he went back overseas.
So that was World War I.
World War I, yeah. And he was over there and served, and he got to be a sergeant, in fact.
Oh, wow.
So he was there, and in the meantime, my mother, she had been married to a man over there who was in the Salvation Army, and then he was in the Army, but he was what they call a stretcher bearer. He's in the medical corps. So, but they were married about 1915, I think it was. And then when he got home on leave, and then he went back, and then that's when they used the poison gas, and he got gassed over there.
Oh, wow.
And he died. And he's buried in Rouen, France. So she was a war bride and a or a widow right then.
Mm-hmm.
So then my dad was over there, and he was on leave with a friend of his, and where he'd known my mother. He went and went to her place to visit, and they did, and spent the afternoon, whatever it was. And then he and the friend got on the subway and the train to go back to camp. Well, I've heard this story before. Dad got to the station, and then he told his friend, go on alone. He was going back. So the friend went on, and Dad went back and knocked on the door, and Mother opened the door, and she said, well, what are you doing here? And he said, oh, I came to see you. So anyway, they started going together, and then this was be 1918, later in the year. See, she had not too many months since she lost her husband.
Okay.
But anyway, they got together, so they got married in February 1919, and so they came over to Canada here, and they went out to Whitehead too, so the whole family was out there then.
So Whitehead was already established before this?
Yeah,
this
that's
point,
my
okay.
grandfather and his family were all there.
Mm-hmm.
My dad had been there, and then he went overseas for the army, and then he came back with my mother. So they built a house out there.
So for those that are watching this video, they probably don't know where Whitehead is, so did you want to give it? It's out by Donahue's, correct?
Yes.
In the vicinity?
Where Mike and Ann Donahue live, that road wasn't there in front of their place.
Yeah.
It went in, the old road in behind their place, and the road went in there, curved around, and it came out about just this side of the foot of Christie Ridge, about where Terrio's had the trailer in there, right along there. And then where the road went in and wound around, it branched off back into Whitehead settlement.
So do you have any idea of how many households would be there?
Oh, I don't.
Several
not
families?
Really. There weren't too many. My grandparents' place, and then my dad and mom, they had built a house there. And then there's some little homes there. I think they're kind of summer homes, more or less.
Okay.
Louis Grieve had a place there, and I think Jimmy Golding I think he had a place there too.
Oh, wow.
And parents, they settled on what would be these land grants back in those days. You come over and you settle on the land, and you're supposed to improve it each year, and you get 100 acres of land, so they had that. And then they tried to live off the land, but I suppose they had gardens and did something in the woodwork. Had itchy nose. Something in the woodwork, but anyway, yeah, another thing was helped them, where that road went in around and curved around behind Donahue's. There was a lumber mill there. A man by the name of Charlie Anderson had it. And my mother got a job there. She was doing cook. She was a cook got the meals for the fellows working. And we always laughed. She said, Dad was cookie. So anyway, they got a job doing that. So that went on. I don't know, this going on quite a while, you know, and you might not want to hear all this.
No, it's great.
But anyway, that's where my two brothers, oldest brother, Lionel, was born in 1920, and Giles, the second one, he's born in 1923. And their birthdays both on the same day.
Interesting.
But anyway, when my oldest brother, Lionel, got to be nearing 6 years of age, my mother said, he's got to go to school. Well, the only trouble was, the school was about 4 miles away, way out Thomason Corner. And they were way back in the woods. And my mother told me, she said, Dad didn't care if Lionel went to school or not. He'd go to work in the woods or something like that. And she's pretty determined, you know. I don't know if I say it or not, this English determination.
Yeah, that's right.
But anyway, she's going to school. And they must have had some, well, say arguments about it. because she packed up her bag and took the 2 kids, went back to England.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, she had them both baptized over there. I've got papers at home there written, their birth certificates. I've got that. And anyway, they're both baptized, and she's going to put them in school over there. So Dad must have changed his mind, and he got over there and got them back, and he must have said he would agree to what she wanted. So she said they had to go to school. So they get back and they took the house and they jacked it up, put skids under it. And in the first good snowstorm in December, they had some fellows with teams of horses. I think there's about 3 teams of horses. And they hooked onto it, and they had a bench along the side of the house. The driver sat on, each one drove his own team of horses. And they hauled it into McAdam. And my brother Lionel, he said he could remember that. He'd be about 6 years old. He just turned 6, I guess. So they brought it into McAdam. And then you got to remember too, that Harvey Road wasn't the Harvey Road like it is now. It was just like a wood road, an old rough wood road, gravel, miserable. So they come in, and then they come in and they went up onto Pleasant Avenue where they put the house. It's the house that Eddie Blair lives in now. Well, they came in from down the lower end of the hill, like down where, well, I don't know, the old people would know where Nick Laking lived and the Narramores lived, or Joe Williams lived along there. And they came up that way because the road just went up to the top of the hill and stopped and didn't go down over by towards the Mounties area. It just stopped there. So they got the house in there, and anyway, I know one of the Laking boys, he's gone now, Maynard Laking. He said he remembers when the house came by and they had to get the fellows to push the wires up and, sticks, shove them up. That'd be the old days of the CPR supplied electricity to McAdam.
Okay.
Yeah. And anyway, they got up there, put her up there, and they went to school.
That's quite amazing, though, to think back then
went to school, yeah.
Go all the way across the world with 2 young boys and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh look.
Yeah, quite determined.
What you can do when you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long was your family up on Pleasant Avenue? Because eventually.
Well, they come in there about 1926. I was born up there in 1928 in that house upstairs. You always said the front bedroom.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's where I was born. And we lived up there until 1947. And what happened, it's getting, excuse me, in the 1920s, in the late 20s, that's when the Depression hit, 1929, I think it was. And my dad was trying to get a job, and it was awfully hard to get a job. But I tell you, but before that, when he came in, and he did get a job, he got a job as storekeeper for Charlie Anderson, the man who owned the lumber mill. And he had the store on Depot Street, right next to Faulty Towers, what we call that, between that and the Fred Embleton house. The foundation's still there, the store's gone. So he kept store there for quite a few years. Because when I was a young fellow, I wasn't living at home. I was farmed out when I was 6 years old to my aunt and uncle.
Okay.
And I eventually got a bike, and I'd leave it at the store and walk over to school. So, yeah, it's a funny thing, in the times that, when you look back, I talked to my oldest brother, Lionel, one day, and we were just chatting, and I said, I can't figure out why they sent me up there to live. I said, I know my mom had health problems, and I said, I think they just didn't have any food to feed me.
Well, yeah, during the Depression.
They didn't, they didn't have anything. And trying to get Christmas time, we got an apple or an orange, we thought we were doing well.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what happened there. And he worked there for a few years. Well, then Charlie went bankrupt in the business. So Dad was out of a job. He did manage to hang on, and he worked for a while, but he didn't get any pay. He got the food he took home to eat, and that's all, no pay. So that ran out after a while. Then he tried to get a job on the railroad section, any place he could, and just nothing. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons they sent me out the way, and didn't have any money. And they were quite destitute, really. And so my mother said one day, didn't know what he was going to do, and then she said, well, you ever think of running a store, starting a store? He said, you know, you've been in the store business. You've thought about that. Well, the only trouble is they had nothing to start, no money to start a store with. But as luck would have it, or whatever you call it, they had good friends down in York Mills. See, one thing about being out in the woods there, they travel around the old horse and sleigh, a horse and wagon, and they got to know quite a few of the people up on Christie Ridge and out in York Mills, and they were all good friends. And I know my mom used to say they'd go out there in the winter times and she'd put paper bags around her feet, keep her feet from freezing.
Wow.
But anyway, they were good friends with people in York Mills. I can tell their name because they were really, really nice, good to my parents. And it's always been appreciated. It was Howard Little and Lottie Little, and they ran the wool mill up there.
Okay.
And they were good friends, and they knew how destitute the family was. And Lottie said to my mother one day, she said, Minnie, is there anything I can do to help you? Let me know. So they thought about it, and then Mom got in contact with her one day and asked her, do you suppose any chance you could lend me $100? And she did. She loaned her $100. Well, what would that be now? 5,000 or more? 5, 6, 7,000, 8,000, 10,000? But she did.
Wow.
And Mom paid it back eventually. Paid it back, but she never forgot that kindness.
Isn't that something?
She thought how good they were to her. And my mother used to take us young fellows out there, and we were kids, and go over and play in the woolen mill.
Yeah.
Go up and upstairs, and trap door on the floor, and it used to be down a big pile of wool down on the floor, and we jumped down through it on a pile of wool. And that was that. So Dad started up the store in 1939. I think it's been June lately. We've been there for 81 years.
Wow.
And he started that up, and he just like a penny candy store and just little stuff. But he and I can remember the first day too. I was 10, 29, 28. Yeah, I hadn't quite turned 10, and that's when I was living with my aunt and uncle. But I was standing out in front of the store one day, and the first day opened up, and there's 2 or 3 girls in there getting the candy. And one of them was Rita Estes. She was Rita Anderson. She was the daughter of the man who Dad had worked for. And she said to Dad, she said, Jimmy, you told me when you got your store going, you're going to give me a piece of candy. She says, I want my piece of candy. So he did. But that's how we got started anyway. And he rented the place and worked at that for a while. And for quite a while. And then we got into different things. We into the meat business. And we used to have to wash up the dishes and stuff in the morning. And so the lady next door was Mrs. Piercy, James Piercy. There's two James Piercys in McAdam. One had the other store. This is one that used to have the store where we were.
Okay.
And she'd put on a kettle of hot water, and I'd go and get the water and bring it in. And we'd wash the dishes and trays all up and get into the meat. Then we eventually got a little cooler to showcase and stuff like that. We had no place when we got into the more meat. We had no place to put it, but as luck would have it, over next door on the empty lot that's there now, there's the Andersons had a store. They were in the business, and they had a walk-in cooler there. So we rented the cooler, the use of it. So we'd have to carry the meat back and forth from that cooler for a while. And then eventually they wanted to, not do that. So they sold us the cooler. It had been built such a way you could take it apart in sections. So we had it taken apart and brought it over and set it in the store. So we got into that.
So when the store opened up in 39, like, would most of the stock and whatnot come in through the train on boxes and crates?
Yeah, a lot of it come on the train. There wouldn't be any trucks like that for it then. No, it'd come on the train. Or I don't know. Oh heck, I'm trying to think who it all came from. I go back as far as Kitchen Brothers, and then there's FGI after that, and there's whatever, Barbers, TRA, all these names, but they came in that, and then we used to get the meat, used to come out of Canada Packers in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, and they bring it down the refrigerated cars, and then the fellows unloaded at night and just put it in on the floor there, and we'd go up first thing in the morning and it used to be a horse and wagon at one time, but then we eventually got a little half-ton truck and go pick the stuff up and bring it over.
And you guys used to do, and I think you do a little bit now, is deliveries to home. That used to be a big thing.
Oh yeah,
is to deliver to folks.
We did a lot of deliveries one time.
Yeah.
We delivered 6 days a week.
Wow.
And we'd take you take the little half-ton truck. It was a full 8-foot-long body then, not these club cabs and all that. And you'd have that pile 2-tier deep with boxes, or sometimes 3-tier. And you'd take 2 loads of them on each side of town each day. Did Monday, Wednesday, and Friday across the other side of town on the east side. And Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturday we did this west side. And you'd take 2 truckloads a day. And get along around Christmas time, it'd be hectic. You'd be delivering day and night. We'd rent another little truck to help delivery. Frank Carroll's father, Walter Carroll, used to work down at the garage, down Les McMillan's garage, and that's just past Henry Scott's road there. And he had a little Model A Ford truck there. We used to borrow that too. And that's the one you have to adjust the spark and the mixture and all that.
Okay.
But I knew how to do that because I had a cousin out Christie Ridge that I was telling you about, the family. He had a little Model A, and he took us for a drive. He did truck mechanic work for us too. But anyway, he took us for a drive one day, and I was watching him. I was just a young fellow in my teens, and I could see what he was doing. So I knew right off just what to do. You had the pedals, foot and clutch and all that. Knew what to do. So we borrowed that too and helped delivery. And around Christmas time, he'd be busy as old heck. You couldn't, I've seen this the week before Christmas, you'd deliver right up at 9, 10, and 11 o'clock at night. And it'd be so late, just before Christmas, the people would be gone to bed. I've even gotten up and delivered on Christmas morning.
Wow. So
yeah.
You're just like Santa Claus.
I don't know about that. But anyway, I did. So I did it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, back then, you didn't have much choice. You had to work. If you wanted to eat, you had to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
and it's amazing, like you talked about the loan there for the store, of how people came together and make ends meet, and you said, it survival depended on that.
Oh, look, you had to do it. Lots of things you didn't want to do, but you had to do it.